All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Mickie Kennedy. Mickie, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I want to start off by just giving a shout out to Brianna over at Interview Valet because she, Mickie, was the one that reached out to me on your behalf. And what's kind of cool is uh, I'm drawing a blank right now on the founder of Interview Valet, but I interviewed him about a year and a half ago for the podcast and
I think it's
stuff.
Tom Schwab, if I remember
It is.
correctly.
It is. That's exactly who it is. Yes. And so ever since then, every once in a while they reach out to me and say, "Hey, Kev, we got somebody that we think would make a great guest for your show." And they've done that a number of times. And every time they've done that, it has been such a great experience. And so when Brianna reached out and said, "Kev, we got somebody else that we'd like to connect you with," and I'm like, I'm all in. And you and I had already, you and I already made time to talk and get to know each other a little bit. And now here we are, Mickie, and I am totally looking forward to this conversation today. And so,
Yeah.
what I want to do is just kind of start with, I want to turn it over to you. So, and just give you an opportunity to share a little bit about, what do you do and who you serve and what inspires you most about the work you do. And maybe you even want to get into a little bit of the backstory of how you got into it. I'm just going to kind of let you decide what you feel is just relevant to share.
Okay, so my name's Mickie Kennedy. I am the founder of eReleases. I started it in October of 1998, and what I do is I help people get press releases out to the media. When I launched, I was just sending press releases and messages by email, and unfortunately, that has changed because there's so many databases being sold that journalists are just being spammed to the point that it's hard to get through their inbox. And so I fortunately was approached by PR Newswire. Gosh, I want to say maybe even close to 15 years ago, and they liked what we were doing. They liked that we were serving entrepreneurs and startups and authors, and that was a base of audience and customer that they weren't really wanting to reach out to because they're looking for people who are like, oh yeah, let's add a multimedia newsroom for $30,000 to our account. And these customers are at most going to spend a couple of $1,000s a year. So they liked that we handled that. We handled the customer service. We offered writing for those that wanted it, and a lot of education and support to get people to even write their own because these aren't this isn't rocket science. It's just a press release, so they're very a very simplistic form. And I have just been going and providing a lot of education. I say I'm like the Johnny Appleseed of press releases, and I know that a lot of people out there have heard that press releases don't work. And I would agree that the majority of press releases do not get earned media. And maybe the numbers like 97% of press releases that go over a wire do not generate earned media. And that's what we call it when you get an article written about you. The press release itself getting replicated on a few websites, that's not important. And there are businesses that specialize in that. And again, these press releases often get picked up on locations on a website that aren't searchable and no eyeballs are actually going to see them. And what we're looking for is the real earned media, like the article in Wall Street Journal or New York Times or New York Post or lots of other magazines and trade publications. And that does happen and can happen. And what I tell people is, focus on the 3% of press releases that are getting picked up because there's lots of patterns there. And I like to provide a lot of education to people about, what those patterns are and, what types of releases people are doing and how they could do them differently and better. And I think one of the, most common releases we get is a product launch press release, which, in and of itself should be newsworthy. But a lot of people just send a release out and it's like, here's the new product. Here's a list of features. It might even be bullet points of features. And then here's a page to learn more about it. A journalist likes to tell a story. They follow story arcs. There's nothing there that gives the journalist a building block for crafting a story. And so, one of the easiest things you can do with that type of press release is incorporate a use case study. Someone, you didn't just launch it in the marketplace without people trying it. Share one of those stories. Like, here's a company that was losing 12% a year, and they tried our logistics software solution. At the end of a 90-day trial, they're projected to be, a profit this year of 5%, and just by utilizing this solution. And then have a quote by them saying, hey, it was easy to use. It made it so much predictable, and we're able to give better quotes and estimates to our customers, based on our actual expense. And it's been great. And so having that, a journalist can go, wow, that's a product launch I can get behind and write a story.
Yeah.
And so, they can talk about this new product. Here's an example of someone who used it. This was their transformative outcome. And here's a sentence or two about their experience. And so that feels more of what a journalist is looking for. And, do not discount providing enough information for a journalist to write a story. And it's the reason that everybody that appears on Shark Tank, and I mentioned Shark Tank because most of the people that appear on there actually use our service to send out a release before their
Oh, God.
episode airs. The producers recommend that they do a press release before their episode airs, and they recommend us. And so it's one of the ways in which they're trying to get some messaging out. But the one thing you'll notice if you've ever listened to Shark Tank is they don't open and then start jumping, talking about the numbers and how profitable they are and how much it costs to acquire, and therefore they project if they get this rep money that they can grow the revenue a certain percentage. I don't know that I've ever seen that. What they do is they share their story. They
Yeah.
share what it was that was their journey. Why they started the business. They might have gotten laid off, and their father had died the previous year, and they used to have a hobby that they go to the flea market and sell something, and they're like, I wonder if I could build a business around that. And my husband or spouse said, yeah, take some time and figure this out. And that's, I've been doing this now. I'm making a little money, but I really would like you guys to come in so that we could just jumpstart this thing. And, it really is that formula. And the reason is, people do not relate to logos. They do not relate to company names. They relate to people, and people want to do business with individuals. And so, that is why this, human interest element of having someone's story is so important. And it's one of the ways in which I think that a lot of small businesses handicap themselves because they have a chip on their shoulder. They feel have an imposter syndrome. They want to appear super corporate and just like a big giant company. But when it comes to the media knows that the big giant companies can afford to advertise. They love to put the spotlight on the mom and pop, the startup, the new business. And so don't feel being small is a disadvantage when it comes to the media. It is actually a superpower because
Wow.
journalists get the most shares and the most views of articles that people don't know anything about. And so, th- if you have a product solution for a particular industry and it's new and no one knows about it, they're going to get a lot of more shares and eyeballs looking at that than them covering the latest iteration of Microsoft Office. And
Yeah.
so, and journalists like to be seen as curators. And by discovering this new tool and this new company and sharing it with their audience, they are, elevated in the eyes of their readers or viewers. And so it's one of the things that I've seen is just been really transformative. And, that's just one type of way to sort of take the common press release and make it matter more for journalists. But there's lots of other things that you can do to make your messaging more of doing the 3% that matters and have a better track record of getting media pickup. Another one is, sharing, what is your unique selling proposition? I think that a lot of startups do really well with PR because they have really refined in a sentence or two what it is that they do that distinguishes them from every other business that's out there. And they've got that elevator pitch down pat, and they know how to communicate that at the beginning of a release and really talk succinctly about what they're announcing and why it's so relevant for their business and for the industry.
Yeah. Wow. You shared a whole lot there, Mickie. And what I really appreciate, well, for one, you've been doing what you do for 26 years, and so you've definitely got a little bit of experience in getting press releases out there and stuff. And what I really appreciate is that you don't just do press releases, but you know what it takes to get the 3% that get noticed and that actually lead to coverage and articles getting published and stuff. And so you really help your clients with that. And then the other side of this, the PR Wire partnership that you have is just phenomenal, because what a great deal that is for all of the clients that you serve, because normally that organization, they only serve larger companies. But because they partnered with you, because they saw that you guys were already doing all this stuff, that you were training your people, that you were helping them, and that you really knew how to help them craft a press release, that they didn't want to waste their time with doing all that. But because you guys already did that, now they're just like, well, man, it totally makes sense to partner with you guys and bring you onto our platform and give that edge to your clients, because you're doing all the work for us and we don't have to deal with all that. It's a win-win for everybody, And so that's absolutely brilliant, Mickie. And so now I want to ask, because I'm just curious, what is one of, I'm sure you could come up with a lot of examples, but let's just look at one. What is an example of somebody that you have worked with that got some really great results that you're just incredibly proud of, Mickie?
Sure. So, I guess I have a case study on my website, and so I'm going to
Okay.
start with that one because it's the first one that I have, and the website's ereleases.com. It's called the Dining Bond Initiative. It's no longer with us because it was set up for a very short-lived period to help restaurants close during the pandemic.
Okay.
And they wanted me to send out a release, and I offered to do it free to help them out. And it generated over 100 articles, probably closer to 150 because we stopped counting a lot of the small daily papers. But it got picked up by all the large publications like Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, Reuters, Forbes, CNN, Harvard
Wow.
Business Review, some food publications like Wine and Spirit, James Beard Foundation, Taste, as well as like just dozen after dozens of daily papers.
Okay.
Um, and it was basically it worked that if you nominated your favorite local restaurant and the volunteers were able to contact them, you could give money that would go directly to them during this time of uncertainty. And if you had a restaurant that was where you went every year for your anniversary and you really wanted to make sure that they kept the lights on, you could like donate 50 or $100 or something, and the money would go to them and it'd be backed sort of like a dining bond or gift certificate scenario. And it generated over $10 million in revenue
Wow.
and hopefully helped a lot of small mom and pop restaurants across the country. I can't imagine there were many chains that people were, thinking of. These were really just little
Yeah.
favorite places that people had. And it really just shows that if you have the right message by going on the wire, it can really leverage that opportunity and go wide.
Yeah.
And I think this one did really well because it was positive news at a time of uncertainty, and there was a lot of little negative undertones with things, going home for 2 weeks to flatten the curve was turning into much more than that.
Yep.
And
Yep.
also, I think it was actionable. We were sitting home powerless, like we couldn't do anything, but here was something we could give $40 to our,
Yeah.
favorite little restaurant or whatever amount we deemed that we wanted to do. And it was giving back. And I think that that's why that did so well. And there are lessons there. One is strike quick. This was going to be a very short-lived effort, just to sort of bridge helping restaurants out until the government instituted programs to provide funding. And I think that that's where PR can work almost instantly. The press release can go out today, and the article can be published as quickly as tomorrow. And I think that that's one of the things that you really don't realize can happen so fast. And most people are used to a much longer lead time. And I also think that it sort of exemplifies that the media does want to get behind positive news. And a lot of times everything's so negative. So if you have something very positive that you want to share, and it can, uplift and make other people feel motivated and energized, that could perhaps do really well, especially if there's a time of uncertainty or some negative news, clouding the entire media plex.
Yeah. Wow. What a great example. I know, a lot of restaurants didn't make it through COVID and stuff. I know some of ours favorite ones in the area here did make it. And but there was one restaurant that, because I just live in a little small town, and but the one restaurant, they during COVID, they, I remember during the early days there was a big toilet paper shortage, and people couldn't get toilet paper, but the restaurant, they could get toilet paper. So they were like, hey, if you need toilet paper, just come on down to the restaurant. We'll sell you rolls of toilet paper and stuff, because their chain, their supply chain, they could get it through their supply chain and stuff. And they started doing all the takeout stuff. And they even created a big, like a quarantine breakfast offering that was for enough to like feed 6 people and stuff. And so they did really great at just shifting and pivoting during that time in order to stay open and serve the community, even though people weren't coming into the restaurant to eat for a period of time and stuff. And I'm so glad that they're still open to this day, because everybody likes going there. I'm glad they survived all of that. And so, well, so now that we've got a little bit of context set, Mickie, I'm gonna shift gears just a little bit, and I'm going to reiterate the question that I asked for the benefit of our listeners. And so, Mickie, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today wouldn't be possible if not for this person or persons? And Mickie, I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Sure. So I think for me, one that I think really stands out is Nancy Schlesinger.
Okay.
She's with Vinehouse Hiring, and I met her in Perry Marshall's roundtable. Perry Marshall, the marketing guy,
Yep.
and
I'm
I,
good
I
friends
think
with Perry.
I think he his entree to the world of marketing was mostly through Google Ads,
Yes.
and that's kind of how I met him. But I've been in his roundtable off and on for probably 10 years out of the last 17 years or so. And I go in, get my head real full, take a little time to implement and focus on stuff, and then I go back for more. But it's been a great experience. But Nancy was there, and she works in corporate hiring and helping people to make sure that they're attracting the right talent, and how to really drill through the type of people that you want, that are going to be people that will stay with your business long term, and gives you a lot more different perspectives on making the right hires. And so she after one of the roundtables where I was talking about how I don't like my employees, and that turnover is terrible, per people stay an average of 1 year, and we're talking about just editors for the most part. And so Nancy came to me and said, look, I don't work with small businesses in a consulting way much anymore, but I feel like you're wasting your hot seats in the round table talking about something I could probably solve for you. And so she said she will interview my staff, interview my customers, and look at my job postings and figure out why I'm attracting the wrong people. And at the end of that, she came to me, I think in early April of 2015, and said, I've got some news. Are you sitting down? And I was like, sure. And so she tells me that she's talked to many of the customers, and they all feel that the customer support is outstanding, and that their interaction with my staff are, they're quick, they're giving them all the answers that they need, and that they're a really valuable resource. And she says, so you've got the right people. And then she says, I've also discovered why they're leaving. And she says, it's because of you. You are a horrible micromanager, and the people feel like they can never do anything right, and that you're constantly picking at them with little things that they could do to improve themselves. And that's true. I sort of took this principle from A/B split testing, saying you make little incremental improvements, over time. Picking the winners, you're going to end up with something that's just really great and solid. And I was doing that with my staff. I would go up and say, hey, next time someone asks about that element, rather than starting off by saying, no, we don't have that, say that, hey, we have something that's even better. You're looking for just local distribution. We have national distribution with local saturation. And for just a couple of dollars extra, you can saturate your entire local market, but you're also opening yourself up to national exposure and what that means for you. And my employees were just like, no, we don't offer local distribution. And so that's a wild example, but it was like some of the stuff that I was encountering. And she said, at the end of the day, you just have to trust them that you've given them the information, and they're going to talk to customers in their own natural language, and you're not going to be able to formulate every conversation as if it was written by a marketer. And so I said, okay, I will take this into advisement. I think because I have a poetry creative writing background and nothing business, when people I trust tell me something, I generally believe them. And so I didn't challenge it, because that's one of the things that when I tell people about this, they're like, didn't you fight her on it and say, I'm not a micromanager. It's my darn business. And I just want it run correctly. I was like, no, I just completely agreed that that's probably what's happening. And so I spent that day trying to not be a micromanager. And I found myself by 2 p.m. standing behind an employee after they got off the phone and said, hey, next time someone calls and says, and I just stopped myself, and I thought about it. I gathered the entire staff and said, I'm going home. And they're like, why are you telling us? You go home every day. I was like, I'm not coming back. And so in April of 2015, I left my office, and I've only been back for little visits here and there, mostly parties and things like that. I told them I'm going to focus on marketing and strategy and not be in the weeds of the day-to-day operations anymore. And a funny thing happened. Everybody that was there at that time is pretty much still there. And also,
Wow.
right. And also, they sort of elected their own person they wanted to lead the office. We had someone who was a little bit older there, more of a mom person, and so naturally they gravitated towards her. And now she's the managing editor. And even more importantly, like, my business has tripled since then. And I don't
Wow.
think we would have ever been able to triple without me focusing on the business and the bigger picture, and to get the growth focus, because I was so focused in the little things, trying to make every conversation perfect, trying to make every little interaction perfect. But every interaction was good. It just wasn't what I felt like was leading from a marketing standpoint. So you just have to realize that you can't control everything. And
Yeah.
so once I backed away, it freed me. I was my blood pressure was through the roof. I was always dissatisfied with my staff. I was really just pessimistic. And now I am the biggest optimist. I have the hours and time to focus on the bigger pictures, to talk to people on podcasts, and to provide education. I take the 3% of press releases that work, and I build education about, hey, you should be following these types of releases. Here's a video masterclass for free, and I provide that for my customers. And so I'm just energized, and my business and my personal life is in such better shape because of what Nancy did. And she's just been it's been freeing in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. You know, what a beautiful testament to what Nancy shared with you and stuff, and what she discovered, and that you were just able to accept what she found, and realized that, okay, you know what, I'm going to make some changes here. And I can see that she's right about this and what she's sharing, and I can see how this could be happening. And I'm going to make these changes. And then, of course, now, to have turnover of people about every year. And so now we're talking 2015, 9 years later, most of them are still with you now. That's pretty phenomenal, Mickie. That's pretty phenomenal. And of course, tripling the business in the process too is a great thing.
Right.
So now you got happy people and a growing business.
Right.
And you are, because it's interesting. I mean, man, after our first conversation that we had, I had left that conversation thinking like, man, Mickie is such a great guy, just such an easygoing, laid back, just helpful person. And and maybe you came across different prior to 2015. I don't know. I didn't know you back then, but you sure come across that way now.
Right. Yeah. It's something that I think that a lot of entrepreneurs have this perfection mentality. And I think that you just sort of have to break yourself of it. I don't know what I would have done if I couldn't have gotten away from the office, because I also recognize there are people out there who are probably natural micromanagers who don't have the ability to just step away from the office or the people that they work with, in which case they're going to have to combat that on a daily basis and make peace with it, or otherwise continue to make their employees' life chaos.
Yeah.
It is definitely something that, if your natural tendency is to be overly involved, is just sort of, what would life look like if you stepped back a little bit and focused on the bigger picture and the things that are like growth engines in your business, and less about the fine tuning and polishing things that are probably you could get away with not having to do at all.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Well, Mickie, for anybody who's listening to this right now, going, man, Kev, I really like Mickie. I love the way he shows up, and I love the way what he's been sharing here. And you know what, man, I bet there's some people listening go, maybe we could use their help and stuff. Any resources and websites we can share? I know you shared your website earlier, and I've got that, and we'll include that with the show notes. But anything else you want to share with our listeners?
Right. Yeah, I think the website is a huge resource. There's our social media on the lower right of any page on ereleases.com. We have a blog. We have a lot of press release samples and templates on the website. We have a guide on how to write a press release. And I'd mentioned that video masterclass that I put together of the 3% of releases that people should be focusing on. I'll make that available to anyone who's interested in it at no charge. It's found at ereleases.com/plan, PLAN, and again, completely free. And it's under an hour long video. There's also some additional information that comes with it, PDF and stuff like that. But basically, it will go through the types of releases you should be focusing on. And if you build a PR campaign of 6 to 8 releases and follow that model, you will get media pickup. Not every press release is probably going to work, but you'll have 2 or 3 successes out of 6 to 8 releases. And there's one press release that I go into that has never failed, always generates earned media. And just to give you a sneak peek of that, it's to do an industry survey. And it's like to, basically survey your industry right now and take their temperature on several topics, and, spend a little quality time figuring out what you should be asking. It could be around AI, because a lot of industries are really worried about how AI is going to affect them. It could be about workplace culture coming out of the pandemic. Some people don't want to work in the office as much anymore. And is that a problem, or is that something that you're dealing with? It could be around, finances. Is money drying up in your industry? Is it harder to get people to buy your products or your higher level, more profitable services, or it could just be things that are more specific to your industry. And if you were going to a conference or a trade show, what are things that you would like to talk to other people in your industry about? Those could be topics for you to build a few questions for a survey. And I like Survey Monkey. I like to do 4 questions per page, so it's going to be 8 questions or 12 or maybe 16. I don't like to go over 16 questions because it gets to be too big of an ask. But also the multi-page thing makes it easy. If they stop, you've got a page or two of their responses, and if you front loaded the most important questions, then you've got those covered. And as far as like a Rolodex, you don't have to know a lot of people in your industry to be able to send it to. There are so many independent and small trade associations in every industry. Stay away from the big one that everyone knows, the one that probably puts on the conferences and things like that. They have their own media team, and then they don't need you. But if you go and approach a smaller independent one, in my industry, PR, everyone knows PRSA, Public Relations Society of America, but there's also 470 other trade associations in the United States alone that are around public relations and PR. Or
Wow.
communications and things like that. Some of them are going to be very small and specific, like Florida PR firms, but there's some that are like PR shops of 50 employees or less, and that
Okay.
probably represents the bulk of PR firms across the U.S. And if you're excluding the big ones, but then again, who's going to take the survey at the big one and really speak for the entire company? I don't think that there probably would be one person who has synthesized everything at the company that could ideally take that. So I don't have a problem with that. But then you approach them and say, hey, I've got this link. Could you send it to your members? I would like to do a survey. I really need at least 100 responses for it to be statistically relevant. And in exchange for that, I will put you in the press release I'll be issuing over PR Newswire in the coming weeks. And I had mentioned that all of our releases go out with PR Newswire. They charge over $1,600 for a 600-word press release. With us, it's like a third or maybe even less the price of it going through us. So it's a huge savings. And they know that they don't get a lot of attention because very few people know about them. So that trade association is going to feel like, wow, this is a great opportunity for us to get a little media attention as well. And about 2/3 of the time, the first association we approach will say yes. And then they'll send it to their members. You analyze the results. You build out a press release that focuses on the survey, build out a page on your website where you have all the responses for the entire survey. But the press release is going to focus on just one or two of the most important or surprising questions and responses. You're going to provide the analysis for that. You're going to have an amazing quote where you felt like, hey, I believe the numbers skewed this way because, and put a little analysis in there. And as a result of doing that, the customers that I've walked through that process generally get 8 to 14 articles, earned media articles, original articles written by journalists every time they do a survey and then a press release like that. So it's a huge
Wow. Wow.
opportunity. And a lot of ingenious journalists are going to go and look at your page on your website and maybe build out an article on a different question and topics. And potentially you could do another press release on that one if you feel like, yeah, they really did pick out a really good question there that I didn't think about, but that is really a hot button thing, and I could build out a release on that as well.
Wow. Wow. You've definitely been doing this for a while, Mickey, and your experience shows through, man.
Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today and just share from your heart. I really appreciate it. Any last thing you feel led to share before we call it a wrap, Mickey?
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
that the big picture thing here to take away from it is that PR can work. It is accessible for people of all sizes, especially small businesses. And also, if you're not an expert at stuff, hang out with other people that are. That round table that I was part of, it really made a huge difference in growing my business and getting me to the position where I am and put me in proximity to people who are experts in other things. And I I fear what would have happened if I never found out that I was my own problem for my business. And so, take advantage of the opportunities there are to network with other businesses out there.
For sure, for sure. Well, Mickie, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to do this today. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you.